You're listening to the Yoga Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Cruikshank. Our podcast brings you information and resources to enhance the therapeutic effects of your practice based on a deeper understanding of anatomy, physiology, and the integration of modern science and research with traditional practices and experiences. Join me and my co-hosts, Rachel Land and Katya Barch, as we dive into all things yoga, research, and wellness. The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs. Welcome back from our holiday break. I hope you all had a nice holiday. We're here to talk about New Year's and have a hopefully a short, quick, inspired podcast episode about resolutions, healthy habits, and kind of just kicking off 2023 with a bang.
Did you have to think about what year it was? Because as you started, I was like, oh my God, 2020. Oh dear.
Right? Because you think about it and plan for it for so long that you're like, aren't we already in 2023? I feel like we've talked about it for so long, we're already there.
And yet 2024 sounds like another planet to me. Sounds like a galaxy far, far away.
Right? Yeah.
But give me 6 weeks. I will have started planning ahead, I'm sure.
I know you and I are both definitely planners.
So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah. And I love it. You kind of brought some topics for us to chat on. Do you want to kick it off? Sorry.
Yeah, this is the time of year
Hand it over.
This is the time of year that there's just a lot of noise about New Year's resolutions and phrases like New Year, New You. And these are things that don't really speak to me personally. But that said, I think it is a natural time of year that we might take stock and project forward and to think about where we are versus where we would like to be. And you are somebody who obviously thinks quite a lot about health and healthy habits. And so I thought you might have some insight to add that is a little bit deeper than just New Year, New You.
Yeah.
No pressure.
No, I agree. I do think there's something about resolutions that can be helpful to get some momentum, I think to proactively direct the our own trajectory, our own growth or potential in life. I don't think it has to be January. There is something really nice about this kind of like power in numbers in January. There's this kind of group effect that does feel, I think, extra potent in January. But I know for me, sometimes January doesn't always feel like the month for me. Sometimes I do it in March, or spring is a really great time for looking at that stuff. It's like we kind of get stuck to this idea, I feel like, that our resolutions in January have to be a year-long goal. And sometimes our goals shift. And I feel like for me at least, I'm always kind of recalibrating and taking stock and shifting and adjusting. And in January, I do like to kind of take advantage of that shift and momentum. But I think for me, it's always about being really open to myself and what I need that year in particular.
Yeah. I feel very much the same. I don't tend to do much in January because here where I live, the end of December, beginning of January is usually everybody's summer holidays. And so I'm not thinking in a really organized way about where I want to go for the year ahead. I'm just trying to relax as much as possible and get outside and enjoy the outdoors. But around my birthday at the end of October, which is spring for me, is more where I tend to take stock and think about what has happened this year and how I've changed and how I would like to change moving forward, and whether there are, levers that I'd like to adjust in my life. But like you, I might do it in a bit more detail around my birthday, but I do it all the time. I'm always thinking about how am I feeling and how am I feeling in my life, and am I happy with the way that it is, or is there some source of dissatisfaction that I could do something about? So for me, it's an ongoing thing, and the arbitrary 1st of January doesn't fit my rebellious tendencies.
And it's so different. I know when I lived in Australia, it is so different around that time of year. I know for me, I usually do something. I've had my optimal health book I mean, I've been doing that cleanse, the 30-day cleanse in January for probably 20 years now, so
Wow.
plus years, and then I think the book's been out for 15 years now, which is cool because a lot of the concepts have lasted the test of time, and I remember
That's
working so
always
hard to try
nice.
and convince people on some of those things back then, and now it's so easy for people to step into a lot of these ideas of not just nutritional support, but lifestyle, home remedies, and yoga and
Mm,
meditation. And it's nice to have that 3D balance. And what I love about it too is each year I pick out different things that are important to me that feel relevant. And I know from doing this with patients and students for a long time, a lot of times they will do the same. You know, you do the
mm,
big overhaul to know like what's most helpful for you that year or what you might focus in on that year. Like, I know, like, for me, sitting down and having this kind of blank slate mind of what do I want to see for myself this year is an interesting thing in January, especially in in the northern hemisphere in the winter months. I think after coming
mhm,
out of all the holiday celebrations, it's like some years for me, it's like I want to aim for more of a balanced schedule. Some years it's, you know, specific health goals,
mm.
digestion, energy, more positivity, mental health. I think there's so many different ways you can go to be able to let yourself kind of think outside of the box rather than just this kind of like, I think people tend to go to the weight loss, which to me doesn't represent what people are really looking for. To me,
Yeah.
there's a lot beneath that that
That's
is
exactly it.
important,
You've
I
gotta
think
keep
we'll get
asking
to.
why? What would be different? Would you feel more adventurous? Well, you can feel more adventurous at the weight you're at, or would you feel more comfortable in your body? Well, you can feel more comfortable in your body other ways. So, yeah, I love that idea of delving a little bit deeper. And I'm glad that you mentioned the 30-day reset because it's something that doesn't work for me. I'm much more the sort of little tweaks, little adjustments in direction. But I know for a lot of people, that sort of hard reset is so helpful to kind of make space for new habits, to kind of disconnect a little from old ones, make space from new ones, and to sort of adjust their way of being through the course of whatever that reset period is. So I think for some people, it can be so helpful to really make a directional shift.
Mm, yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think this is where, you know, when we look at kind of shifting behaviors or um, changing habits, I think for me, this is where the yoga practice really comes into play. Our
Mm,
ability to really sit and reflect and see what's behind it, you know, where it's coming from. You know, even with something very what seems really simple and straightforward, like sugar cravings, you know, is it blood sugar fluctuations? Is my energy level fluctuating?
mm.
Is it lacking some sweetness in life and needing maybe some social connection? Is it grief or depression or, you know, why? Like
Boredom,
I keep
yeah.
boredom. Yeah, I keep digging deeper, and I think these are like the tenets of yoga philosophy too. Is, you know, can I be truthful with myself about what
Mm,
that is, what's behind it? Can I also be non-judgmental about what that means? Because we all go through these human conditions and phases in our lives. And for me, uh, both in my own work and in working with thousands of patients and people trying to feel their best, I think one of the most important things is really digging and looking at these things and
mm.
being able to uncover what's behind it. Like that's half the battle, if not a lot more. So
100% agree. Even that feeling that I mentioned earlier of vague dissatisfaction with some aspect of my life, if I weren't practicing yoga, that might never be anything other than just a little tug at the back of my mind. But the more time I spend quiet and still and reflective, the more I notice that dissonance and the more cold I am to investigate what is that exactly and where is it coming from? And is it a transient thing or has it been here for a little while? Is it something that I need to sit with? Is it something that I need to shift and adjust to make changes in? And I think you're right. That really is the hard part of the battle is actually figuring out what's going on for you before you decide what you're going to do about it, if anything, because you might not
mm,
actually need to do anything except to change your relationship with that thing, whatever it is. You did a
mhm.
post on Instagram a little while back that really spoke to me. I loved it. And you started off by saying research has determined that about 70% of our health and longevity is dictated by our lifestyle, which is really just a collection of our daily habits. And I thought that was such a powerful place to direct this conversation, because we've been sort of skirting around habits and perhaps need to talk about how impactful our habits are. I've just read
Yeah.
Atomic Habits, and James Clear says that 40 to 50% of our behaviors are habits. They're just things that are so deeply ingrained or in a groove that we don't have to waste any time or energy thinking about them. So I can imagine that there's a lot of power to be had in directing our habits in ways that are positive for our health and wellness as opposed to destructive.
Yeah, and I think we know we know from a health and wellness standpoint that the small changes that we can stick with over time
Mm,
are much more potent than the big changes. The little changes, we make are so important and significant, and sometimes we kind of overlook those. But
mm,
I also think the big changes can be a launching pad. So, if you feel motivated to do some big changes in January, just keep in mind that the goal isn't usually to keep those going forever. It's great if you
yes.
just find one small thing that you can continue, or perhaps, you know, sometimes it's also, I find, learning what it feels like to feel good. I've worked with so many patients over the
Hmm.
years that don't even recognize what it feels like to feel good until they've gone through some kind of bigger overhaul, whatever that might look like for them.
Hmm.
But once I can start to feel what it feels like to feel good, it's easier to want to come back to that rather than this kind of like pushing myself to be some idea of what I think I should be.
Yes.
For me, really aiming for that is such an important part of it too.
Oh, I love that, because you're right. That sort of hard reset can be an opportunity for us to set ourselves up for failure. To be like, right, from today
Hmm.
on, I will never drink alcohol or eat sugar or eat any processed foods again. And I will always exercise for an hour a day. And that might be something that you do in January to really fire you up and to change your experience and your perceptions. But setting yourself up to do that every single day for the rest of your life is probably not realistic for most of us. So you're kind of setting yourself up for this experience at the end of failing, as opposed to,
Mm,
right, now that I know how I feel and I've had an experience of that, what aspect of that do I want to carry forward with me? What am I going to keep, and
yeah.
which areas can I kind of soften up and relax into?
And like the curiosity to go and
Hmm.
explore and say, let's see what comes of this. I'm going to commit to this for a month rather than
Hmm.
some long ambiguous time frame, and see,
Forever.
are there one or two habits from this that I felt were most helpful, or
Yes.
did it just give me an awareness of what it feels like to feel good, so that then maybe partway through the year I can do a little something to kind of tune up. A lot of times I find, when I do this work, I like to do both nutritional changes as well as kind of yoga and meditation, and sometimes little home remedies or things, and maybe neti pots. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
different ways you can go. Abdominal massage is a really great one. Castor oil packs. There's so many great ways to go. But then kind of focusing in on just one or two rather than like
Mm.
the full
The full
overhaul.
menu.
Yeah, later
Yeah.
on.
I love
Yeah, and
that.
it kind of puts me in touch with what's really helpful, and when I start to feel like I've moved really far away from that feeling good point, then I know what I need to come
Yeah.
back, and it's up to
You
me
have
when
it
I
sort of
wanna
like a
do that.
magnet, or a compass kind of drawing you back. You've had that experience before, and so you can be drawn back to it as opposed to some imagined,
Yeah.
what is it like when I feel good? I don't even know. Yeah, the
And I think there's something to be said of like, are we're not meant to, like, there's so much focus on living our,
best
fullest
life.
capacity. And I think that's wonderful, but there's also an important contentment in somewhere in between, because we can kind of
Mhm.
obsess about like becoming as I know for me, it's cognitive function is a really big thing, or as
Mhm.
productive and efficient
Yeah.
as possible. But I don't know about you, but there's some beauty to leaning into that inefficiency sometimes too, and the ebb and
Oh,
flow within
yeah.
our year and our lives. It's so important.
100%. I'm glad you mentioned this, because I think there is this imagined ideal of perfect health, where we wake up in the morning and bound straight out of bed, and we have endless energy and clarity and focus and motivation, and we're present to everything in our lives, and we're in all of our relationships 100%. And then, it gets to nighttime and we get sleepy and we curl up in bed and sleep like a log all night long. And I'm sure we've all had some days like that, but I don't think that's meant to be every single day because we aren't machines. I think there are meant to be ebbs and flows and cycles and rhythms. And sometimes when your energy and motivation are higher, and sometimes when they're a little bit lower. I think that's natural. I think it's normal. And leaning into it means that we get to really enjoy the days when we are full of energy and focus and motivation. And also, we get to enjoy the days where we just kind of curl up on the couch with a blanket and a cup of tea and take it easy.
Yeah. And I think appreciating the seasons of our year and the seasons of our lives
Hmm.
that is not necessarily just about how productive we can be, but about how much we can kind of really appreciate our lives and the
Mm,
importance of that as well, especially with, I think, so much burnout happening in the world,
yeah.
these days. I think it's an important balance of that yin and yang that we see in our yoga practices so much that I really love too. So,
Mm.
yeah.
You said something else
Um,
in this Instagram post that I wanted to touch on, which I think is really powerful. You kind of talked about how focusing on desired behaviors or desired habits can sort of crowd out some of the ones that are less helpful or less desired. So having a sort of positive focus rather than a negative one. And you've touched on that already with your, am I going to incorporate neti potting each day, or will I focus on meditation each day, as opposed to I will not watch television, or I must not eat sugar. You kind of focused on those positive additions. Why do you think that's so helpful, that kind of crowding out of the behaviors you're less interested in?
I For me, this is the most important part. I've been like
Hmm.
waiting to get to this. I almost started talking about it earlier, but like this is the crux of
Yeah.
it all for me. Visualizing that change that you want and how it looks in your life, what it feels like,
Hmm.
what it looks like in your day, and coming back to that daily. I mean, it was kind of the premise of my second book, or the follow-up to Optimal Health for Vibrant Life, which was Meditate Your Weight, which isn't about weight loss, but really about building a healthy relationship with your body and your health,
Hmm.
and creating these habits. But one of the really important premises of that work too is creating positive habits over negative ones, kind of steering away from this deprivation
Yeah.
mindset, this kind of like beating ourselves up to get healthy again. and
Hmm.
and for me, like, when I come to my practice, or whether that's eating habits or yoga habits, when I come from this place of feeling like I'm in a deficit, like I'm behind, or I like have to catch up, it's a lot harder to stick with it. You
Yeah.
feel like
You feel
you're in a
defeated
negative
before you even
already.
begin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so, for me, it's really important to visualize yourself not lacking, but actually just showing up to help enhance your life and help yourself feel better. And I think that's a really important mindset shift for people for me, at least, I find, and the people I've worked with, to having some staying power in some of those, even just small things that you're wanting to change, or um, changes that you're looking for in your year. I think having that positive mentality is really important. So
Mm.
really simple stuff, like, I often just recommend people sit and take, maybe it's today, take 5 minutes to really dream about what you want your year to look like. And, is that more confidence? Is that better digestion? Is that better? Maybe it's more efficient. Maybe it's saying no to things so that you can have some time to have more balance in your life, whatever that looks like. Maybe that's getting stronger. Maybe that's
Mhm.
stronger hips or something specific. Like, really get as specific as you can. And then for me, it's visualizing what that looks like in my life, and especially how that feels. Like, what does my day look like? Does What looks different about how I move and engage with the people around me, and
Mhm.
really kind of feeling it as if it's already a part of me, and then coming back to that daily and remembering that that is already inside of me. It's just something that I need to kind of dust
You've
off a
just gotta
little.
realize it. Yeah. No, I love that. I really do, because I think when we focus on the negative, the lack, the deprivation, it creates a really kind of closed, narrowed, tunnel vision type
Defeated.
feeling. Defeated. And there's only so long we can exist like that before willpower gives out, really, and
And I
we
really
crack.
think even down to like, especially as it comes to a yoga practice, I feel myself, this is just a personal experience, like I engage with the practice differently, even so much
Mhm.
as like how I engage my muscles versus just kind of going through the motions when I'm actually oop, appreciating and and really enjoying those things.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
that's
you
really
can even
important.
imagine this, and I feel the same thing about when you're focusing on the negative versus finding space for the positive, welcoming it in, making space for it, even if it's something that's a little bit new or a bit uncomfortable or outside your normal habit or pattern, just to kind of make space with the vibration that that creates. This is a little new for me, or this is a little different for me. Can I just notice how that feels and know that it's leading me to that feeling that I created earlier of having more confidence or having more clarity or being able to say no? That
Right.
curiosity that we keep coming back to is everything, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I think weight loss is all often, top of people's lists for New Year's. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. There obviously are many reasons that people would want to do that, but really looking at like, what is it that it gives me? Am
Hmm.
I feeling like I have more energy in my life? Am I feeling less sluggish? Am I feeling more confident? Am I able to move through, like the
Mm.
functional movements of my life better and being able to focus in on that? Because there is a really real place. I know for me, um my grandmother died in her early 50s of what they termed obesity related complications. I grew up with my mom um, fighting to lose weight her whole she was always very overweight and trying to, doctors were always
Mm.
encouraging her to lose weight. She did all the fad diets. And it's funny because then me and my sister both became, went into the health and wellness industry. She's a Pilates teacher, a nutritionist, and I do acupuncture and yoga. And so I think it's kind of ingrained in both of us to really not take for granted our body, not take for granted the capacity that we have to move, that we are able to move. It's a gift
Mm.
and a privilege to be able to move our bodies and to also think of the food that we eat as nourishment. And that's not to say we don't indulge and like there's a place for all of that, right?
Mm.
Indulging and being social, and for me it all serves a purpose. But I think whatever your goal is, look a little bit further behind it and try and
Mm.
find the positives too, to like what does that actually mean to you and how many layers can you dig deep? Like
Yeah,
well, the
but why?
confidence, well, like why do
Yeah,
I
but
want the
why?
confidence? What does
Yeah.
that look like in my life? What does it bring me? Because even confidence can be kind of shallow,
Yeah.
if I don't really think about what
What
that does for me
situations?
and
Mhm.
how it manifests in my life.
Mhm.
What does that look like? So,
Yeah, I love that.
and again, I do think it's a fine balance of having goals and, feeling healthy. And even
Mm.
when like I have patients who come in, I used to see a lot of patients who would come in trying to lose weight at Nike, especially, and they always just assumed they had to go run and beat themselves up and do all
Mm.
these things they hated. And then they'd fall off the wagon and it'd last a
Mm.
little while and they'd hit their goals and then they'd, swing the other way. And it's like, well, what if we switch the story and instead
Mm.
of beating ourselves up, finding exercise you enjoy, finding
Yeah.
things you love. I think that's why I really like doing the yoga conditioning on our site too, is
Mm.
because it's it's not it's not necessarily always that different than a conditioning class you might see somewhere else, but there's a different mentality, I think, a lot of
Mm.
times behind it. And maybe that's really subtle and maybe it's more prominent in some classes than others, but there's this feeling of also for me, maybe that's just what I take into it, maybe hopefully what you can take into your classes as well, just this
Mm.
feeling of trying to make myself feel better, trying to enhance this beautiful machine of my body that is
Mm.
brilliantly accommodating and balancing and checking and regulating and like doing it all so brilliantly. If you really know the body, you know, like there's a lot of shit that can go wrong,
Yeah.
like that doesn't.
It's almost a miracle really that things go often as seldom as they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there've been a lot of themes come up in our conversation already about firstly really delving into the why behind becoming your own internal toddler and just keeping on asking why. Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Until you start to get to the root of what you're looking for, that little bit of vibration that's telling you that something needs to change. What are you actually looking for in terms of positives? What do you want to feel? How do you want to have that manifest in your life? What would it look like? What would the daily experience be like? So finding space for real clarity around what you're seeking. And we talked quite a bit about turning that into a positive, focusing on what you want to bring in or add as opposed to what you want to cut out or move away from. And just the energetic, oh my God, I sound so woo woo today, don't I? But the energetic impact that has of welcoming in as opposed to, trying to hold the door shut to stop it getting in makes such a difference. You also mentioned about
Totally.
making things realistic, not expecting this to be day one of the entire rest of your life of everything being completely perfect, but picking things that you can make space for in your life in a really maintainable way. And you also spoke about the sort of the hard reset of sometimes you can take 30 days or 21 days or however long it is to kind of reset your habits uh, and create a different experience of being in your body that then gives you more clarity around what do I want to keep doing? What can I let go of? How does it really feel when I'm feeling good in my body? And what do I need to do to come back to that? So lots of kind of themes that have run through the conversation so far. What have I missed? What else?
Hmm. I think that sums it up really well. I mean, for me, life's too short to not enjoy every
Hmm.
moment, and I think you can also enjoy taking care of yourself, even if that means. And I do think there's a place for everything. Like sometimes there's a point therapeutically where maybe we have to eliminate certain foods or
Mm.
do some of these things that might feel like they're depriving us. There are definitely therapeutic reasons why people might have significant changes to their diet or their lifestyle for medical reasons
Mhm.
potentially as well. And I think even finding the positives in those, if you've decided that you want to, cut out alcohol or bread or sugar or whatever for
Mhm.
January, finding the positives behind that that remind you of why it's important to your life and
Mhm.
your appreciation of what we have, this beautiful life, and again, this privilege to be able to be in a body that is able to move and breathe and interact and connect, and being able to take it all in and appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think the reason that we've been kind of harping in on habits is because they are so impactful. If we were just relying on the decisions that we make consciously, that's a very small portion of each day. Really, much of our behavior is dictated by the habits that have become unconscious. So being mindful about where those grooves are, which things are sort of ingrained in our patterns in our lives, and are they leading us to the kind of outcomes that we want, or are they leading us to the kind of outcomes that we don't want, can be a really helpful topic for exploration. Whether you do that at the beginning of January, whether you do that in spring, whether you do that on your birthday, whenever, it can be so helpful to kind of pause and take stock and determine where your rhythms are carrying you. James Clear called outcomes a lagging measure of our habits, and I think that's a great way of thinking
Yeah,
about it. The stuff that I'm doing today probably isn't going to change how I feel today, but it may well in a month. It definitely will in a year, or 5 years, or 10 years.
absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
And hopefully this gives a little inspiration for people as they set some of their resolutions, but also some healthy expectations and
Hmm.
ability to check in. And again, I think really these yoga practices that we do on Yoga Medicine so much can be a great way to support that. Just bringing this information into your practice, setting that intention at the beginning of, for me, it's even just that moment when I step on my mat of like, I'm here to take care of my body. I'm here to take care of myself, not beat it up, not because it's done something bad to me and I need to punish myself and like and it makes it so much more interesting, I think, too, when you get to really appreciate like, ooh, there's the muscles, there's the challenge, there's the thing. It's kind of
Yeah.
fun. So
And I
hopefully it
always,
gives you guys something good to chew on.
yeah, I love that. And I always start a practice with the same question in my mind. What do I need? What do I actually need, as opposed to what do I think I should do, or what do I think I should have, but what do I actually need from today? And sometimes that is relishing the challenge. And sometimes that is seeing the challenge and saying, not today, not for me.
Yeah.
It is that ability to make those few conscious decisions that we actually have the energy to make each day more mindfully.
Yeah, and it's not to say that I think that's a really good point because it's not to say that the challenge isn't important. Sometimes we do need a good kick in the butt to
Yeah,
like get us up
100%.
and give us that challenge. And sometimes when we're feeling down, and I can speak to this especially too after
Yeah.
my dog passed, like there was a point where I just like needed to kind of push myself a little bit and get things moving. And I think we all have that ebb and flow in our lives, whatever form that might take. And,
Mm,
so I think to me, though, those are the positive challenges is not like torturing myself and forcing myself to do it. It was waiting till it felt like the right time and,
mm.
and then knowing that I needed to
Have your
kick
ass
things
kicked.
up a little notch. Yeah. And
Those
we all know
natural
how important
rhythms.
strength is. That's important, especially
Hmm.
as we are lucky enough to go through, many different decades of our lives. We know that there's the importance of all of the work. And that's why I love all of the different practices that we have on Yoga Medicine Online.
Yeah.
And why I have my series coming out in January. On this is like a perfect balance of movement and challenges as well as the yin because I feel like so many times you come to our platform and it's like it's hard to choose. And I know we have some of these classes already that have some of like what we call the yin and the yang, but these are meant to be like potent hour-long practices that both move and challenge as well as nourish because I think that part is often overlooked in
Hmm.
January. We're kind of like trying to do and do and do and we forget about how important it is to put back in.
Hmm.
So hopefully that will be enjoyable, and I know we have tons of other classes on there. I know Valerie's done a bunch of yin and yang classes. Maybe you
Hmm.
have as well, but
We also
yeah.
have some intention setting practices. If you feel like there is something that you want to kind of shift and you're lacking clarity around what it is and what it might feel like. I know Dana's got one where you do the entire practice as a process of crafting your intention. And we have others where you set the intention first. So even just searching in Yoga Medicine Online for intention could be a helpful way to kind of clarify your thought process and help you determine where you want to focus your energy.
And your class, I think it's probably this week or maybe soon. If not, getting clear for the new year. I love that one.
Mm,
You've got that one. And then of course, if you love this combination of yin and yang, you can always just grab a short hatha vinyasa practice and a short yin practices, which is what I always do. It's just nice to kind of have them in one place together and
mm.
click one button, but
So we'll
it's
link
all
to some
there.
fun class options in the show notes if you're looking for a little bit of extra inspiration. Anything else that you would leave people with? Any final tips?
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Find some goals that you love that bring you happiness because ultimately, if it makes you happy, you're more likely to stick with it. And if you stick with it, you're more likely to have a big impact on your health and your mental and physical health and well
Hmm.
being. So
100%. Thank you very much.
thanks, Rachel. Happy New Year's,
Happy New
everyone.
Year. Woohoo. I feel like we should have those woohoo, or maybe poppers. So just imagine now that we're clinking champagne and doing the champagne bottle poppers and
Sparkling water.
yeah, all that stuff. All that stuff. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for listening to Yoga Medicine. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you got something out of this episode, please spread the word and share it with a friend. You can find more information, articles, trainings, and classes at yogamedicine.com, or check us out on social media as Yoga Medicine. You can also email us at info@yogamedicine.com. Thank you for being a part of our Yoga Medicine community. We look forward to seeing you again. The content of this podcast is not medical advice and is not meant to replace medical care. Please consult your healthcare provider to determine what is best for your unique healthcare needs.